This is Kilkenny.com. I'm in conversation with John Robinson from Kilmanagh. John is chairman of the County Executive for ICMSA and he's also on the National Council. John, just how strong is ICMSA in Kilkenny?
ICMSA, thankfully, is very strong in Kilkenny. We have a very active county executive, and we have 7 council members, national council members.
So that's 7 Kilkenny farmers really
Yes.
on the ICMSA, on the National Council.
Yes.
And what are you lobbying for? Beef must be the thing on everyone's...
Well, for the last few months, the number one thing is the crisis in the beef industry, and I suppose we are lobbying to try and can there be something done about getting farmers to have some idea of the price they're going to get for their animal the day the animal is born, and to try and smash the monopoly that seems to be there with supermarkets and meat factories. Like, one seems to be blaming the other, and also there is Irish cattle going into English factories are making lesser money, and we're trying to stop that as well. But progress is very slow, if non-existent, and it's very frustrating on farmers who are losing money.
Yeah, a lot of worried farmers about beef at the moment.
Unbelievable. Like, anyone who had bulls in particular last spring and fed them, it was bad enough to be losing money on them, but to be in a situation where you couldn't even get to sell them, and you're overstocked, and you're buying expensive meal, and you're feeding cattle who, when you feed cattle that are fit and they get over fat, it's down in value they go. So we just want to have a more free-flowing market, and to have a guarantee of an outlet for them when you have them fit.
John, ICMSA are advocates of the family farm. How does the ICMSA stand as regards the expansion of the dairy herd and farmers, going deeper into debt for that expansion?
Well, I suppose it's a very exciting time on dairy farmers, because most of us have been caught in the grip of milk quotas for the last 25 years, and it's new to us to be able to produce milk limitless. But I suppose you can't expect to have a situation where you can have jam on both sides of your bread. If volume is going to increase, can you expect to have the price as good as it was for the last 12 months? I don't think that's going to happen, and that volatility is going to become more the norm, and you're going to have spikes and valleys in the marketplace, and that's going to make it very hard for anyone in business to budget for borrowing and for expansion, because at the end of the day, if you borrow too much money and expose yourself in a weak market, you could get swept away.
And that's dictated by world markets and world prices. But John, the family farm, is that something that's going to become non-existent in the future because of the amount of labour units needed to operate a successful dairy farm?
Well, I like in Ireland, it's tradition that it was family-run farms always, and I can't see that changing, because it would take generations to change the mindset of a family unit. And I suppose what I would worry about is that maybe when younger people get away from the land and see how easy there is a way of making life, that come back to the slog after giving 6 or 7 years away in college or working someplace else, that they mightn't be enticed to come back. And one of the concerns the ICMSA would have is, like, with the expansion in cow numbers, that the labour aspect on the farms, is there going to be a problem there? Because there is a lot of farms. There was a survey done a few years ago, and I think there could be about 50% of farmers who don't have a successor.
Yeah, it's quite, and also access to land from the older generation is an issue as well.
Yes, there seems to be a little bit of a mindset now turning in the direction of partnerships and long-term partnerships and leasing land long-term, and the ICMSA are lobbying hard with the government to have tax incentives there for the facilitation of long-term leasing, where somebody who is getting old, like we say, when you reach 60 years of age now, milking cows on your own is becoming a physical challenge. And if you could go into a partnership or a long-term lease where tax isn't too big a headache, it would probably be the road for older generation people to go, because nobody wants to give up the security of their land and maybe give it over to the next generation. There are so many pitfalls there now, like with the marriages breaking up now and families not being what they were back 30 or 40 years ago. It's not as straightforward or as black and white as it used to be, because everybody has to be, their future has to be guarded, and it's not easy to know what's the best. It's a different situation for every family.
Absolutely, and the older generation need to be respected as well, and what they've built up to and want to.
Of course, like when you're after giving your life farming and work on the land, you don't just suddenly want to be a non-farmer. You'd like to have some input into the business, and you'd like to think that you're valued as well. So, like ICMSA have always recognised both sides of the fence in this.
And John, I remember, I think it was earlier this year, ICMSA in Kilkenny especially, and yourself were very vocal and demonstrative regarding a land auction, and regarding farm debt and whatever. What's your position on that, and how did that work out?
Well, sure, we'd always be pleading to the banks to go down every road of negotiation before you'd go and do a land sale. It's the last word. That they should exhaust every other avenue before that would happen.
And have you had much success in that?
Well, yes, I would say that banks in most cases would be fairly patient, but like there's always it's the same as everything else. Every situation has its own merits and its own story, and it's very hard to generalise on something that's so passionate and so personal to any person.
John, thank you.
Well, thanks, Stephen, for coming here today and getting our side of the story, because we do feel very strongly about the expansion in the dairy business, and we would definitely be pleading to people to do your figures and go on your own story, and don't mind what the guy down the road is doing. You have to make your own situation work.
John, thanks.